Many of you may have seen one of my videos talking about forever ammunition and how I coined that phrase and explained exactly what that means. And today I want to coin a new phrase, BPD Amnesia. What it is, what you need to know about it, how this amnesia can lead to name calling, and how it can lead into victimhood. Let's go. Hey friends, glad to be back today. And today I want to talk about BPD Amnesia. I recently coined this phrase because I think that it makes a lot of sense in certain situations, and it's going to help you to analyze situations that you might have fallen into, to understand what it is, when it begins, and then to understand the peripherals of it. So peripheral meaning what happens after, the name calling or the victimhood. And we're going to understand that. But I want to begin today's video talking about what you need to know about what is BPD amnesia. BPD amnesia is when you've told your spouse or your significant other something, you've told them about a situation, you've been completely honest and you've given them details, something that happened, you've discussed it, they've asked you multiple questions, you've answered those questions, you've had a discussion, okay? Many times in that discussion, things maybe got heated. There was an argument, there was a fight, right? And so you remember the interaction extremely vivid and extremely well, probably more than you'd like to. And in a few days, maybe 2 or 3 days pass, and your spouse or significant other asks you the same exact question from previous day about the same exact situation. What happens here is that it takes you off guard because you were in the discussion, you were in the conversation, it got heated, there were arguments, right? But the person's asking you the same exact questions in the same formation as it's already been discussed. This is what BPD amnesia is. So why does it happen? Let's go through those reasons now. Okay, so today I want to talk about the 6 reasons that I have uncovered that I believe that BPD amnesia is used. Now, there's not just one reason, right? Because we're all unique. We're not cookie cutter versions of one another. We have unique reasons for why we do things, so we don't just have one reason. So let's look at the 6 optional reasons and kind of maybe some of the subject matter that would go with each one of those, right? Okay, let's start. The first is to hear the story again. So the first time they asked you the questions, you answered the questions, right? Now this time, days later, after you're confused and not understanding why we're having this discussion again, they're asking you the same exact questions in the same exact order. Well, they're doing this to look for the holes in the logic and the lies to discredit you and to find fault within your story. Okay, so let's say that your spouse or significant other doesn't like you hanging out with certain friends, and then confronts you about, are you hanging out with them? Are you spending time with them? And you are honest and you say yes. And how long have you been hanging out? What were you doing? Now, when they ask you this again, they're going to be looking for changes in that story. Is there something sinister going on? Is there something that you're lying about? Have you been doing this for a long time behind their back? Okay, so you have to be consistent with the story, right? But you also have to ask yourself, how much more am I going to keep over-explaining and validating myself as well? But this is the first reason, is to find holes in your logic and to discredit you. The second unique reason is that they don't want to actually believe what you said. They don't want to actually make this a true reality. Okay, they're kind of hoping that you're going to take it back. Good example is you have a discussion and you say, hey, I want a divorce, or I want a separation. And you tell them why, and they ask you all these questions, and then days later, they're asking you the same questions as if that conversation never happened, that they never heard you say you want a divorce, that they never heard you say that you want to have a separation. This is because I think they're hoping that you're going to take it back, act like it didn't happen, right? And so going back through that can be extremely painful, but if you don't say your truth, you're kind of getting, it's kind of a technicality here. It's like you have to speak your truth, even though somebody might not want to hear it. If this is your truth, you have to state it again. So it's because they don't want to believe it and they want you to take it back. The third unique reason is that the last time that you actually talked about it, the first time it came up, when you were answering their barrage of questions, they were actually inside their mind. They weren't in the moment, they were in their mind, and they were thinking their own mental negative broken record. They were just on that mental negative broken record, and then they were actually having a dialogue with you in their mind. They weren't really listening to you. Okay, so when you were talking, their voice was much louder than yours in their own head. So they don't really remember what you said. They got bits and pieces of it, right? But they don't want to tell you that. They don't want to come back and say, hey, I wasn't listening because my brain was going a million miles an hour. See, they don't even catch the fact that their brain is doing that. So they don't even know that that was happening. They just caught bits and pieces, almost like if you were on a cell phone and you were going through a tunnel and somebody caught like 5 words and then 2 words and then 3 words. That's what they're hearing. Okay, so then they ask you again days later, right? Confuses you. You're like, what's going on here? But it's because they're trying to figure out what you said. They don't want to say that they didn't hear you, right? And so they go through it as if it didn't happen. The fourth unique reason is that they're wanting you to tell it over again, reliving the shame, reliving the guilt, reliving the pain from the first time of having to explain yourself. A good example here is that they've caught you watching porn on your computer, okay? They caught you. Maybe you haven't had sex in the marriage for years, okay? No judgment here, guys. There's not ever any judgment on this channel. And you have to relive it and answer the questions about the porn and how long you've been watching it and all that stuff. Very painful. And then days later, you get asked the same questions, reliving the pain and the shame and the guilt of ever watching it, right? And this is one of the reasons why it's done, is to cut you down to size and to make you feel really, really bad about yourself, right? You've already answered the questions. You've already gone through the barrage of questions. Now you're having to do it again and relive it, even making yourself feel even more shame and more guilt. And I think this is a unique reason too, because anytime that someone's trying to cut you down about something that they know is probably going to impact you adversely, they're going to ask you multiple times so that you can relive it over and over again. The fifth unique reason is that they want to start another argument. Okay, they didn't get enough the first time, they want to do it again. And they want to have that negative interaction with you. That's really important to them. They don't see the difference between negative and positive interaction. It's all interaction. It's all attention from you. Okay? Remember when you're dealing with like a teenager. Teenager doesn't mind if you're mad or not mad. It's all about the attention, right? So they're just trying to start another argument. They're trying to fight you again. And as you explain and over-explain, you're triggered to try to prove your innocence or to try to prove what you're saying is true and that you're not lying. You're triggered and then the argument starts, right? And so this is definitely just another way of igniting another argument to just keep arguing and kicking the can down the road in this relationship. The sixth unique reason is that they're wanting you to take back something that you said prior. They're wanting you to take it back, or they're wanting you to augment it because they don't want to do it. They don't like it, okay? Let me give you an example of that. You're going to go get a part-time job. I've been taking care of you financially for 15 years, and now it's time that you go get work. Okay, that's a good example. Another one is we have agreed in the courts that we have joint custody. You've not watched the kids in 3 weeks. We are going to go back on schedule and you're going to start watching the kids on the days that you have the children. I will not accept anything else. Okay, BPD Amnesia comes in. They're wanting you to change your mind. They're wanting you to augment that. Oh, well, you just do it for one day. Or, oh, if you could just do a little bit of volunteer work, that would be great. Anything to get off from what you ask, because you're asking them to actually change and to do something. You don't want to do it. That's a good reason for having this BPD amnesia. Okay, so what happens next after you've done this explaining because of the BPD amnesia? The next part is that they have a tendency of calling you names, victimizing you, okay? After you tell them what's going on, they start victimizing you, calling you names, devaluing you. And most of the time it ends here because you acquiesce to them, because you feel shame and guilt, because you're buying into it, because you're allowing them to fully trigger you and get you engaged in this verbal or texting fight, okay? And it's calling you names, it's telling you how bad you are, what a bad person you are, what a liar, what a cheat you are, what a horrible parent you are. The list goes on, okay? And so you're getting the barrage of what a horrible person you are. Some of it's triggering you because somewhere in the recesses of your mind, you believe it, okay? Otherwise it wouldn't trigger you. If you believe that you were a good mom or you believe you're a good dad and you actually believe it to the core, somebody telling you that you're a horrible parent would not trigger you. So as they're putting you down and they're name calling you, many times in that fight, because of the triggering, there's a tendency to lose your cool, okay? And then the fight switches. Because it's not what you were talking about before. It's not about that story. It's about the way you fight now. Okay, so it goes from the amnesia, clarifying again, then they call you names, then you end up probably getting triggered, then you start fighting back with them, and then they tell you about what a horrible person you are because you're fighting with them and you're so mean, right? Because they've been putting you down, name calling. But what's next then? Because if you can get past that point, there's another point on the horizon. And the other angle is that they become the victim. Okay, so they victimize you. Now it's time for them to become the victim because this is the alternative reality, right? You're so mean, you're so oppressive, you're so mean to me. You put me down, you're such a mean person. You have all the money, you have all the power. I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to survive here on this planet. Okay, I'm just trying to do everything I can. You're making my life so hard. Your life is so easy. You have this great job, you have all this great stuff. I have a minimum wage, I get nothing. So it's like we're creating this victimhood. Okay, so they create the victimhood. And so the thing is that you have to understand that the amnesia is there. Then it's the questioning and the answering and the barrage of questions and usually you over-explaining. Then it goes into victimizing you and name-calling you and telling you what a liar and cheat you are based on what? Based on that forever ammunition, because they take that forever ammunition that I've talked about in other videos, right? And they add that to the back to show that you have to be guilty. You have to be a bad person because you did these 3 things before. You could have done these 3 things 25 years ago, okay? You could have had an affair 25 years ago and it's being brought up now at the back end of this amnesia situation. You see what I'm saying? And then you get to relive all that shame and guilt again. And then what happens is eventually that pivots and switches where then they flip it around that they become the victim. And a lot of times this works too because then you feel sorry for them, right? Well, you're just a horrible person to me. You treat me so badly. Or if you continue to do this, I'm just going to take pills or I'm just going to kill myself or I'm going to hurt myself or whatever. I'm just going to leave and I'm just going to be gone. You're never going to see me again. We never have to talk again. So there's all these different levels of them being the victim. Okay, and so this is what happens in the situation. And so one way or another, you're triggered. If you're triggered by the guilt of them being the victim, you can get triggered into that and play right back into their hand. You see what I mean? And so when you're looking at the amnesia, I don't want you to get off target. I don't want you to be like, whoa, what's going on here? I want you to understand when it first happens. 1, no, you're not losing it. Okay, no, you're not losing it. 2, you did have this conversation before. I want you to realize that. And I think that the start of the conversation needs to be exactly that. Right? It doesn't need to be you acquiescing and answering their questions like they're part of the FBI or CIA or Gestapo. It needs to be like, we've already had this discussion. I'm not really sure why you're asking me again, but 2 days ago we had this discussion. It's either your selective memory, you want me to change my story, or you're looking for holes in my story to make me look like a liar and a cheat so that you can turn around and devalue me and call me a liar and a cheat to my face to make me feel even worse about my life. Okay, so I want you to think about this. Obviously, everybody has a unique reason for doing it. And it could be, honestly, that they had that mental broken record in their own head and they didn't hear you. Okay, and that can be one of the reasons, right? And I understand that. But we have to understand why it's being done. You don't want to get off target. You want to be able to be in full strength while you're having this discussion. And also, you want to be honest at all times, right? Because when you're not honest, or when you acquiesce or you change your mind, they're going to catch that too. But that's also probably part of the reason why they're asking you again, because they want to see if you're actually going to say the same thing this time. I hope this video has helped you. Please share it with your family and friends. By the way, have you dealt with BPD amnesia in your life? Have you dealt with that? And how did you deal with it? And how did you overcome it? Please tell me more in the comment section below. I'm really interested in how you dealt with it and how you discovered what you were dealing with. Please share this video with anybody that you think will resonate with this information and can help them in their lives. And don't forget to live your true life.